Hello, good evening. Welcome to GC's Book Club. It's been another week, and tonight we'll be talking about Charlotte Roche's Wetlands. How are we all doing? Good to see you. Let me just get prepped. I put the intro on thinking I'd get finished in time, and then got to get prepped, you know. This book was published in 2008. I'm going to read through the synopsis and then just crack on with it, really. I mean, I'm sure many of you read it, as the comments are suggesting so far, so let's go. Alright. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, I've basically agreed with the rating that it has. I do look at it and think 2.87 is a bit harsh, if I'm honest, but then again, it's not exactly far off from 3, so it's probably about right overall. So, with more than 1 million copies sold in Germany and rights snapped up in 27 countries, Wetlands is the sexually and anatomically explicit novel that is changing the conversation about female identity and sexuality around the world. Helen Memel is an outspoken 18-year-old whose childlike stubbornness is offset by a precocious sexual confidence. She begins her story from a hospital bed where she's slowly recovering from an operation and lamenting her parents' divorce. To distract herself, Helen ruminates on her past sexual adventures in increasingly uncomfortable detail, taking the reader on a sensational journey through Helen's body and mind. Oh, sorry, my fucking webcam's actually in the way, so... Punky, alienated teenager, young woman reclaiming her body from the tyranny of repressive hygiene. The feminist vibe is just unnecessary here. Mustn't smell, excrete, desire, bratty, smart-ass, vulnerable, lonely daughter, shock merchant, and pleasure seeker. Helen is all of these things and more, and her frequent attempts to assert her maturity ultimately prove just how fragile, confused, and young she truly is. As Helen constantly blurs the line between celebration, provocation, and dysfunction in her relationship with her body, Roche exposes the double bind of her female sexuality, delivering a compulsively readable and fearlessly intimate manifesto on sex, hygiene, and the repercussions of family trauma. In all honesty, even though I think that is heavily leaning on the zeitgeist of our times, it's very accurate and somewhat, so I'd say it's kind of spoiler heavy overall. Kind of gives everything away, because I read it earlier and I was trying to think, like, is there actually anything I can add to that? Like, what else is in the book aside from everything mentioned in there? And there's kind of nothing. Like, I can't say that there's anything else in it, but maybe we'll get there at some point. But yeah, so Wetlands tells the story of Helen, who is in the hospital due to a shaving accident, although I would question just how much of an accident that really is, that was too near her anus. So she has what is known as an anal lesion, and is rushed to hospital to get it looked at because of probably fear of infection and whatnot. She also has a history of hemorrhoids, which is detailed in the first line, which I thought was quite funny. And due to that, the proctologist is suggesting that she has surgery. She quickly does that, and the novel's told in like first person present tense, so it's there's a lot of limitations when it comes to writing in that tense. I've tried it myself. Like, it's fun, and you have to come up with quirky kind of sentence structures to really pull it off, but I can't say that it isn't a slightly grating tense to use. She does balance it, Roche, I mean, quite well with delving into the past and kind of memory type things, and that kind of helps it, I would say. But at the same time, I felt like the longer the novel went on, the more tricky that was becoming, mainly because of the repetitive nature not only of that way of telling a story but of her protagonist as well. So it did suffer a bit because of that. Anyway, and yeah, I mean, really, I mean, it's pretty much plotless, this novel. We do get some insight into her. It's a bit of a weird one actually though as well, because I was pretty like meh about it. Like at the beginning I thought it was very funny, I thought the comedy worked. She did have an oddly alluring magnetism and charm, even though she was pretty grotesque. And I thought my fear at the time of reading at the beginning was like, is she just going to keep trying to push the shock value button to just make her seem interesting? And unfortunately I felt like she did do that quite a lot. It was almost like, I said one disgusting thing, now I'm going to kind of talk about something else, but now I need to add another disgusting thing. So if it's not her anus, it's the stuff that's up her nose. It's the fact that she eats what comes out of her nose. She likes to put a finger in her pussy and then rub the juices behind her ear because she thinks that's going to entice men a lot more than any perfume would do. She takes perfume and whatnot as a personal affront. I actually found those moments were actually where she became quite interesting, because there were a number of instances where it was like, yeah, I actually agree. I do think it is all a bit of a scam. It is weird that we've almost become fearful of what our natural odours are and all of this kind of thing. But then she'd take a massive dump on those points by then basically talking about how she likes to well, there's parts where if she was with a guy, she likes him to come on her hand, and then because then she'll know there's semen under her fingernails, and then whenever she handles other things and gives them to people, there's parts of her being in them and stuff like that. And I don't think she means this in a malicious way, but at the same time it does start to become a little bit grating. It's like, is this what is going to keep us interested in this character as it goes on? Because for me it all just kind of, you start to become a bit indifferent to it after a little while. It's like, yeah, it's comical, but it usually only served the novel when it was kind of pointing out some of the hypocrisies and kind of double standards that we have in society, because it did so in a manner that was merely proffering an opinion, but at the same time it did also serve to highlight an absurdity of our current status quo and whatnot. But it didn't do that too often, I didn't think. But yeah, obviously as we go on, we start to realise that Helen is a child of divorce, that there is actually quite a traumatic incident that she's living with, and her sexual activity and behaviour, and also just how she is with herself, all does start to piece together. I don't think it, really starts preaching or anything like that. It does kind of let you put two and two together, whilst making it kind of difficult to actually like her in any way whatsoever, because it's almost like she's trying to deliberately provoke and just like be like, ha, look, a minute ago I charmed you, and then now I'm just telling you about how vile I am and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, by the end of the novel, I did feel like I still had sympathy for her. And even though it might have been in my own Freudian type of way, where it's like I'm trying to connect because I think a lot of her sexual activity was much more to do with self-destruction, actually. I think there was this element of her where she's like, in the same way that she explores her own body and things like that, it was all to do with self-destruction. the problem is for me with it is that the interesting bit is to do with the trauma, which obviously if you've read this, you know that when she was younger, around the age of 10, I think, she came home one day to find her mum and younger brother both unconscious on the kitchen floor due to a load of sleeping pills that the mother gave to both of them, and the oven door open with the gas on, so the whole room is filling up, and Helen is obviously saves them because everyone's still alive and all this kind of stuff. But ever since, there's been this kind of it's been the dirty secret of the family. I presume it might have said this as well, but I presume that that's the reason her parents divorced. It was probably something to do with that. And it's hard not to sympathise with the fact that her mum tried to kill herself, and in that moment she's tried to take her brother with her and not her. She just kind of left her, or essentially she was going to abandon her to be thinking about that for the rest of her life. We don't go into much depth with this though. We just kind of confronted by it, and then you're like, oh shit, that is, pretty hard hitting, and like to actually imagine what that would be like is pretty horrible, really. And that's around the middle point you sort of get, but then she iterates that she thinks this is what's happened. It's only like almost like she's not quite sure in it. It feels a bit dream-esque or whatever in her memory. So you're kind of like, okay, even though that's probably the case, it could have been altered in her mind, like maybe through her self-destructive behaviour she's actually changed the memory a little bit. Maybe it didn't actually happen that way, but at the same time, because no one in the family's talking about it, it's hard to say really. It just becomes like it's an ever-present thing, but it's almost like something that's not acknowledged at the same time. So that makes it like an interesting element of the novel. But then the problem with the novel is it's set in a hospital bed for the most part, which Helen only ends up leaving right at the end. And we don't get to see her outside of it, and we only really get notions of what she does outside of the hospital room when she's talking about sex, or when she's talking about some relationships that she's in, which are mostly sexual, but it's also, there's some intimacy where one guy will just shave her, and then she kind of woves it in that the reason she ended up in hospital was because this guy wasn't around when she needed a shaving, because apparently this is like a regular thing. And Kendall, I think his name was. And so she does it herself, but because she's very sloppy with herself in many regards, she fucked it up and ended up in this hospital. And then while she's there, after the surgery, maybe because of the drugs and all of this kind of stuff, she starts conjuring up this idea that she should try to get her parents back in the same room, and potentially they might have a rapprochement or whatever, a reconciliation. And this is where the novel for me started to become a little bit questionable. Like it was hard to take some elements of what she was talking about seriously, and it was hard to overlook other elements as well. Like I kept thinking, she's 18. I don't know why she would care about this as much as she does, especially the way she talks about her parents. Like, she doesn't like her mother, it's quite clear. Admittedly, she is young, and mentally speaking, it kind of came across to me that she had the sensibility of a feral child, but a child that is a sex addict at the same time. So there's a bit of I don't know, it kind of set up a bit of a cognitive dissonance in me, really, reading it, because in one moment it's like she's been having anal sex from the age of 15 and then she seems to have racked up the experience of someone in their, I don't know, like could be as early as early 20s, but is more likely to be late 20s, early 30s. But it's also her attitude toward it, because I was thinking about it quite a bit, and I was kind of like, as this was published in 2008, it's in and around the time that I was kind of nearly that age as well. I could work it out, but I can't be bothered. But yeah, so I know that around that era, there was an attitude towards sex where it was purely a hedonistic pursuit. Everyone was humping everyone in a way, and having many sexual partners wasn't that far-fetched. So I can kind of believe that in a way. Her at 18, I don't really know how many partners she apparently has had, but it certainly seems to be a fair amount. But it's also the level of detail it goes into, where it seems like every guy's also going through the back door or whatever. Like it's like there's too much of a collection of like these endeavors, and I had a bit of an issue with the way it was portrayed as well at times, because I kept thinking, is this really as like sunshine and rainbows as she makes out? Because apparently, like, you know, she can ejaculate just by thinking, or, you know, she can orgasm and whatnot, and she likes everything. You know, there's no mention of like being a bit averse to certain things, maybe being a bit roughly treated here and there. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but at the same time, you're not really sure. It feels uncomfortable. I'm kind of saving a few bits because I'll read the first couple of pages, because I actually find it's interesting to go back once you've got to the end, because the little bits at the beginning are quite important. Well, they should be. Whatever's planted in there should be a kind of setup to what remains in the novel, and sometimes it should kind of tell you everything. Obviously not straight off the bat, but in a subtle way it should give some indications. But the problem with the novel, it kind of fucks itself over a little bit, because the setup is she's in hospital because she's injured herself and she needed surgery to fix it. In that moment, she decides she's going to try and get her parents in the same room again, just to see if they can have a reconciliation. Okay, fine. That fails. And it fails in a way where they just don't come into contact with one another, because they just avoid each other. And like, one of them's late, the other one doesn't bother turning up at all, whatever. Like, they don't cross paths. So in Helen's like very juvenile mind, she's like, I need to stay here longer then, in order to make sure that they come and actually meet. So she ends up injuring herself again in the same place, and does so in quite a severe manner. And then we're into the second half of the novel, so we're basically having the same plot line, and the same outcome is accomplished. Like, we don't ever get to this like meeting, and I suppose she has her own kind of realization and revelation in terms of you know, the reason she's ended up there, why she behaves the way that she does, all this kind of thing. It's not too like on the nose. I do think she's still very unwell mentally, and she could potentially be like a suicide case. I would say, in like, you could imagine that if the nurse she leaves with, which again I was a little bit like, really? Like, so this nurse, who apparently is very professional and whatnot, is escorting an 18-year-old. Like, she's a bit of a Fleabag type. I mean, I am basing this off of how Charlotte Roche looks, but from what Helen is described as, it's a bit hard not to think, okay, so she's kind of like quirky-ish indie girl kind of thing. She's alright. She's like a German version of Fleabag. But at the same time, half of her arse has been scalpeled out of her, and she's not well, clearly. I mean, right at the end, she actually does this theatrical thing where, because her parents don't show up after she injures herself further, she then she does this thing where the nurse agrees to go and take her back to his, and all of this kind of stuff, which just seemed a bit okay, whatever. And then her brother turns up for the first time in a kind of Deus Ex Machina type of way, not to save the day or anything, but in a way it serves to her as like, okay, I'm going to tell you what happened because you're too young to remember. But yeah, Mum tried to kill herself, tried to take you with her, and that's the reason you're scared of hospitals and haven't turned up and all this kind of thing. And so she gets an element of catharsis from this, but obviously it's not enough because it's not confronting the real issue. And in a kind of a theatrical type of reenactment, she envisions her mum coming back to the hospital because they have been called due to her injury, and so she starts pulling her hair out, like you presume quite violently, and she sets up on the bed and she kind of creates a female figure and then a smaller male figure, and obviously it's supposed to represent what she saw that time. When her mother tried to kill herself, she even rips wallpaper off, and like she really makes it look like a kind of setup of the stage. But the way it reads at this point, you're like, it's quite hard hitting, I would say. In a way, I think it does wrap up quite nicely. There's a few convenient-ish moments, but in terms of the symbolism and all of that, it's like it's an odd type of like copy catharsis in a sense, where it's like she's doing it because she's in a state of hysteria. Basically, she is having this mental breakdown, and I think that's indicated further by the ending line where once she finally gets out of the hospital, she says, you know, I scream, kind of thing, and I believe it. I think she's like totally lost it. The problem with a lot of the time I found with the prose is that you're in obviously Helen Meemle's head, and so it kind of follows this slight stream of consciousness, and it kind of dots around, and it's her talking to herself, and it's like, yeah, in terms of her youth or how young she really is, it does come across genuine. Like I did think, yeah, that it pulls it off quite well. She does seem like a late teen type of girl, but the prose started to irritate me, mainly because she would do these things where she's talking to herself, and it does get a little bit like, okay, she's sounding a little bit unhinged here, but then the next moment she'll give you this self-aware kind of comment or run-off sentence referring to what she just said in the last paragraph, or sometimes the last line. And it's so as you're reading it, I kept getting this impression, it's like show, tell, show, tell, show, tell, like, but make it quirky, make it self-deprecating as a ruse for just being somewhat self-aware. And it's just, I don't know, it just didn't really, like, it needed an edit. I did think halfway through it, or even maybe after it, like I was just like, this should be possibly half the length it is. It doesn't need to be as long, because what really happens and why it feels too cyclical is because it does go round, literally. Like the first plot gets to a bit where it fails, and then it just restarts, and pretty much the same series of events occur. And whilst you could argue that is what kind of trauma does, in a sense, where it just sets off the cycle. If you were to think of it in a symbolic fashion, it's like the cycle will repeat because it's not being properly acknowledged, and it can't be broken if it's all done through silence. So even her kind of weird mime-esque or stage kind of thing, I mean, I like the ending for that, in the regard that it was like possibly showing how through art and creation she may be able to get over what's happened, kind of thing. But I do also fear for her, in a sense, because I kind of think if you've already gone down the path that you've gone down, you haven't dealt with the trauma that's been inflicted upon you, regardless of whether it was self-inflicted or by others. So you can imagine she will be an absolute train wreck by the time she's 25, and probably just turn around and start blaming it on men and dye her hair blue and all that kind of stuff. Like there was elements of it like that just seemed to cross over into like a sad reality for the yeah, I mean, but the other things where the believability just got too pushed. It wasn't just how sexually experienced she already was. It was also like at 18, she's been sterilized, and you think, is it really that easy to just go and get your womb removed at the age of 18 just because you can pay for it? I mean, seems a little bit far-fetched to me. I mean, it adds depth, I would say, but at the same time, it's almost like it's kind of criminal that someone of that age, and I don't really believe that you can do it that easily, because at least here in the UK, I've actually seen a woman who was in her late 20s or mid 20s, and she was saying like, oh, it's a really long process, it takes way too and you think, well, of course it's a long process. It's not like you can just willy-nilly walk into it. It's fucking, even to get a vasectomy, it doesn't take, a couple of weeks. It's like you go on a list and they will evaluate you. They will warn you of like the consequences, and as a woman, it's going to be more severe because it's even more a part of you in a sense. Like the equipment involved, let's say, is more taxing on the body. So to completely remove that possibility is a very serious decision to make, especially when you already have birth control and whatnot. Like, there's ways of avoiding pregnancy, but to completely eliminate any possibility, I mean, that added an element of like, wow, yeah, she's clearly very devastated by what's happened in her past. But in a weird sense, I kind of feel like she hijacked the spotlight. Like, really, even though I enjoyed reading on her perspective of it all, it is her trauma to bear and all of that kind of stuff, but it's like the family kind of gets shortchanged in terms of like, we don't hear anything from them. They're kind of outside characters who do come in on occasion, but I mean, and again, it does give you a good idea of just how dysfunctional this family is. I mean, it reminded me of my own in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to never speaking about anything of any fucking consequence and just pretending everything's fine and, looking for distractions and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I could relate to that. But there was a problem, I felt, with the balancing act of her being too young to deal with it emotionally, and also being this sexually adventurous, free-loving kind of I mean, she's basically a guy. That's like, maybe that's why they call it feminist, because it's like she just acts like a dude. Like, her sexual history is just conquests. I got the impression at times that she looked at other people, and I say people because she is bi, because of course she's bi, and pays black prostitutes to eat her out, but she eats them out as well and all this kind of stuff. And it's just a bit like, okay, so everyone to her is essentially just a masturbation toy, like, because there's no feeling toward anyone. The only time she seems to be mildly intimate with anyone is when they're obsessed with shaving her from head to toe and all this kind of stuff. Like, there's no real mention of, even just a 3-month kind of thing. It's like every sexual experience she seemingly has is just that. It's just the base kind of, it's just fucking, basically. And apparently that's enough for her to derive utmost pleasure and whatnot. But I almost kind of got this impression that not only are they just masturbation tools, but to her, like, they are literally like just things to press around. And then, I don't know, she might have been autistic in some ways. Like, I felt like her relation to the world there was something slightly off in terms of like how she related to others. Could be wrong on that front, because she seemed emotional, or had emotional intelligence in some way, but in other ways she was totally bereft of it. So it just felt a little bit like it played a bit too much with the believability of it. And yeah, just to, I suppose, close it off a little bit, there was one chapter in it I found excruciatingly boring, and that was, and funnily enough, that was the only moment where she left her room, and it was all to hobble along to an elevator, go up the elevator, get into the cafeteria, struggle, be bleeding out of the arse because obviously she's still injured, not caring about the fact that she stinks of piss and shit and all of this kind of thing. Also, she can buy a cup of coffee and hand over a €20 note that of course is smeared with her blood, and then she can imagine how that note will get out there into the world, so there'll be her DNA out there and all this kind of stuff. Like, she's obsessed with this kind of thing. And then she will graphically describe how the coffee or the coffee beans they make the body react as if it's poison, so she'll basically just have diarrhea so she can just shit herself and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, this chapter goes on and on. It's so boring. Like, it was like, why is this here? This is literally like just like the circle finally getting the end, and then we're just back in the hospital bed and she does the same thing. And it's like, yeah, there was a lot in it like that. But I'll say something about it. I mean, I enjoyed something. I don't know what it was. It was like, even with like the believability of it being kind of thrown out of the window at times, like it was hard to really accept her as a human being. Maybe that was down to her youth, but at the same time it kind of felt like it wanted things both ways. Like, I couldn't decide whether should she have made her younger and less experienced, but maybe she thinks she's got more experience just because she's maybe got more than people around her, and then that would make the whole wanting the parents to get back together thing a little bit more palatable. I mean, for one thing, it's highly cliched to do that. I mean, we've all seen it in crappy sitcoms and soap operas. Like, that's not really a good enough plot point, I don't think, or plot trope. Like, it's just been done to death. And I don't really believe that she wants that much, because her parents are they're just terrible for each other, and clearly, it's a little bit difficult to go back from a suicide attempt, especially if you try to take your own son with you. So I don't really blame the dad for being a bit like, I'm out of here, because it's like, I mean, you can't get a bigger kind of fuck you, really, can you? I mean, there's things you can forgive, and then there's things that will just eat at you, and they will eat at them, regardless. And on the other hand, she should have been made older, because then that would make her experiences and vast kind of exploration of herself a bit more believable, because she would have had just ample time to even do it. Like, I'm just thinking, like, but at the same time, I am aware that, or I even knew a fair few women, young women, who, by the time they were 17, 18, they probably already been with 30, 40 guys, and you just think, but even in that reality, I don't think half of them were doing it from behind and doing all of these really intimate things, actually. But the way she describes it is in this very pornographic way, where it's like, some guys like it when they get a bit of shit on the end of their dick, and other guys really hate it. So I've come up with this technique where I can douche myself to the point where I'm totally it makes everything really pornographic in a way which actually sacrifices the believability of it, because I just don't see, like, how could you have this level of like intimacy with dudes and at the same time treat it just so nonchalantly? Like, it just, everyone's a dildo to her that she can just use at her own whim, and because she loves everything to do with sex, it's just, that's it, that's enough. For me, it was visiting the prostitutes. Well, yeah, I mean, I found that was just a bit like. So since her 18th birthday, she's not only been sterilised, but she's also started to frequent brothels so she can start experimenting with hoes. You know, it's like, I get that she's self-destructive. Sure, that's fine. Like, I think a lot of her behaviour, especially at the beginning, is all down to that. And there is a depressing reality where it's not exactly difficult for a thin woman of that age to obtain sex. You would think she would limit it, as the author, to just with men, but then throws in this kind of like oddly DEI kind of stint where it's like, I haven't talked about black people yet, so let's make my protagonist someone who's really into that, because her dad's racist apparently, because of course he is, and like all of these little things. And I couldn't work out at times whether things were just being added in for the sake of filling the book out. Like, there wasn't really much else going on. I mean, one of the covers has this avocado on the front, and that's because once she's done talking about all of her promiscuity, which she never really is truly done doing, she mentions this whole thing about how she likes to collect the pits of a avocado and then basically skin it like an onion over time, stick it in a pussy, because of course, I mean, why else would you do this? And then obviously this is supposed to be kind of symbolic, because I think at one point she keeps them on the windowsill of a hospital, and I think there's like 3 or 4 of them, and eventually apparently they grow, you know, stuff will grow out of it. I'm not quite sure what, probably whatever nature does in these odd circumstances. And yeah, you could imagine that is because she's trying to heal the wound of her family, and these fucking things that she literally symbolically gives birth to are her, you know. And then that adds an even kind of sadder thing by the fact that she has literally eliminated the chance of her actually having children herself, all this kind of stuff. It's actually oddly a bit of a wimpy novel in a way. Like, it thinks it's really edgy and crass, but if it wanted to be, it should have delved into the actual trauma that she was dealing with and just how fucking brutal that is, because it's not easy writing about, you know, walking in on your own mother's suicide attempt, and not only that, but suicide attempt along with your younger brother who had no idea what was going on. So literally she's part murderer, not, or at least you know, attempted murderer, not only of herself but of her own fucking bloodline. So it's a bit like, and of course that would have an effect on the husband and all that, but it only kind of skirts around this, and that, whilst that kind of adds to the tragedy of it, you just kind of think the novel should have begun at the halfway point, and then once we're outside of the hospital, that's when shit starts getting real, kind of thing. I don't know, you know, it's very hubristic to say what should have been done, you know, or where this should have gone and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not interested in really doing that, but I felt like the actual grit of what was happening was a little bit avoided overall. But there was something to it. I'll give it that. It was readable enough. It was kind of funny. I thought she was an interesting character. I just felt like 100 pages of it probably should have been chopped, because it didn't really add much else. Like, I don't really need to hear about you know, every sexual encounter you've had. It just like, it, what does that serve the novel? Does it serve it when you're just talking about virtually every bodily fluid and how you enjoy re-consuming it and things like that? Yeah, okay, it gives you a bit of character development, but it doesn't serve the plot in any way, shape or form. all it really does is start to test the reader's threshold for the grotesque, and it's like we can all do that. It's not difficult, you know. If you really want to do it in a manner that shocks, it's like you would do it, and I think you do it in a way where it isn't just clearly pandering to some sort of feministic zeitgeist, because that's all it really felt like it was doing it for. It was like, oh, well, you know, it's got a you go girlism to it, but really it's because she's, you know, got the mentality of a 13-year-old. I mean, maybe that was a inadvertent admission, you know, of feminist ideals. I don't know, but you could imagine, like, I suppose I did get this other idea of, like, when I was reading, I was kind of thinking, if this was a guy, if this was like some odd feral male who behaved in a similar way, I don't think there's any chance in hell that it would get published, or certainly not in the way that it's written, because the writing itself it's fine for what it is, but there's nothing like bigger going on with it. It's just it's just a standard kind of story. It's not bad. Like there's some elements to it that I thought were decent. I thought they connected well. I thought it shot itself in the foot with its premise a little bit, mainly because I get it that I think setting limitations within like the world that you're writing is a good idea. I think that's like all power to you. It's not easy to do, but I do this as well. Like I'm kind of like, I did it with Tribute, where I kind of thought that I know that possibility, whether I entertain it or not, it's not going to happen, because that's not the story I'm telling. So it's like you have to basically, I think the limitations of a novel are actually what will make it come to fruition, in a sense, like, because it has to have a set of circumstances, has to have a location, it has to stay within that realm, and the themes and whatnot will also control everything. So basically, like, what a novel is like a massive series of potentialities all stripped down and then forced together, in a sense. So by putting it only in the location of the hospital, she set a good boundary for it to be in. And I thought the things that she does within the room and how she is essentially very alone. Like, I think symbolically that encapsulated everything, and she is trying to avoid that a lot of the time. So there are moments that really work well. And I would still say, I think 3 stars is fine. Like, it's not a bad mark. Like, it's basically saying it's decent, it's quite good, and there's like almost, it's like it has potential. It could have probably been a bit more, but instead of that, I think what the publisher ended up doing was just kind of like, yeah, we need to really like double down on this grotesque shit. When really, you actually think, like, if you're looking for the story, or if you're caring for the story, you would be like, okay, we need to numb that down a little bit, not, you know, wager on it completely, because at some point it just kind of becomes like cheap thrill kind of esque, you know. And I don't know why a lot of the things are in there. I mean, don't get me wrong, of course I love listening to a woman talking about how much she loves anal, but even, you know, after a while it gets a little bit like, okay, like, how much can you really keep saying that? Yeah, I mean, the stuff about makeshift tampons and all that, I actually thought, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I actually imagine if I was a woman, I would have issue with you know, these industries that are trying to sell you nonsense and all that kind of stuff. I thought, yeah, I get that. And I mean, even if you look historically, it's not exactly unknown of us to improvise somewhat when it comes to, say, contraceptives and whatnot. So why not the same with, periods? And I don't know. I actually wouldn't blame the novel for this in a way, but it's a bit of a tricky one because I think marketing-wise, it certainly wants to get on this whole "you go girl" bandwagon, and maybe that's just indicative of the times we're in or are currently in. Because this novel's it's not very old. It's like what, 7 years or 17? Sorry. Something like that. So that's quite young for a novel. But that was almost to its detriment in a way, because after a while she starts to come across as not really a woman. Like she's just a promiscuous child given the freedom to go and do whatever she wants. And it's just a bit like, okay, it's a bit of a weird angle you're going for here. I saw one comparison to Catcher in the Rye, and it's like, fuck off. You can't compare this to Catcher. Like this novel wishes it could touch something like fucking Catcher in the Rye. Although I will admit that the teenager element, there is a slight similarity. I can see in terms of like their inner monologue and whatnot. There's a tiny like, okay, she is a bit Holden-esque in that regard, but fucking Catcher's leagues ahead, like in terms of plotting, symbolism, theme, like everything. Like you can't. The only time you might be able to say it's similar to Catcher is in the vernacular. So Holden gets a little bit grating because he says "God damn" quite a lot, or you should have been there. Little turns of phrases, and that gets a little bit grating because it's repetitive. Helen's repetitive in many aspects. Quite a bit when she's like, back to this, back to my ass, back to this, or whatever. It's like, it's quirky or whatever, but at the same time, and maybe as she should be, she's like a teenager, so she becomes a little bit grating. Well, I'll read the opening just to see if there's anything else in the book that might be worth having a look at. Ah shit, where's my okay, there we go. Let me see if I can do this. My okay, that's better. I thought it was interesting, this author's note at the beginning, because it's almost like adding a sort of a Romano Clef-ish element to it. I don't know whether it's genuine or whether it's just in there to kind of add to the verisimilitude of the piece. But as far back as I can remember, I've had hemorrhoids. For many, many years I thought I couldn't tell anyone. After all, only grandfathers get hemorrhoids. I always thought they were very unladylike. I've been to Dr. Fidel, I guess that's my proctologist, about them so many times, but he always said to leave them there as long as they didn't hurt. And they didn't, they just itched. And for that he gave me a zinc salve. For exterior itching, you squeeze a hazelnut-sized dollop from the tube onto your finger with the shortest nail and rub it into your rosette. The tube's also got a pointed attachment with lots of holes in it that allows you to shove it up your ass and squeeze salve out to quell the itchiness inside. Before I had the salve, I would scratch at my butthole in my sleep so much that I'd wake up in the morning with a brown stain in my underwear the size of a top of a cork. That's how much it itched. And that's how deep I'd stick my finger in. So yes, I'd say it's very unladylike. My hemorrhoids look strange. Over the years they've worked their way further and further out. All around the rosette now there are cloud-shaped lobes of skin that almost look like the arms of a sea anemone. Dr. Fiddle. Dr. Fiddle. Like, that's got to be purposely. She is, I think, yeah, she's bilingual. She's like English and German. I'm sure Fidel is, she's definitely playing with you, that she's fucking with you. Calls it cauliflower. He says removing it would be strictly an aesthetic move. He'll only take it off if someone is really burdened by it. A good reason for removing it would be if my lover didn't like it, or if the cauliflower gave me anxiety during sex, but I'd never admit that. If somebody loves me, or is even just hot for me, something like the cauliflower shouldn't make a difference. And anyway, I've had very successful anal sex for many years, from the age of 15 up to now, at 18, despite the ever-expanding cauliflower. By very successful, I mean that I can come... Oh, sorry, I missed a fucking line there. So my computer's being weird. Give me... Why don't you give me the fucking... Fuck off. Let me try and sort this out. Okay, there we go. By very successful, I mean that I can come with just a cock up my ass, not being touched anywhere else. Yep, I'm proud of that. It's also a good way to test whether someone is serious about me. During one of the first few times I have sex with somebody new, I get us into my favourite position, doggy style, me on all fours with my face down, him behind me with his tongue in my pussy and his nose in my ass. He's got to work his way in there because the hole is covered with the vegetable. I call this position stuff your face, and so far nobody has complained. I think I'll go out on a whim here. I know most guys are dogs, but I can't imagine that quite a few of them wouldn't be a little bit perturbed by this. I could be wrong. I know that you're German, so fair dues, but fuck me. When you've got something like that on an organ that's so important for sex, is the bum even an organ? You have to train yourself to relax. This in turn helps enable you to let yourself go and loosen up during, for instance, anal sex. And since the ass is obviously part of sex for me, it's also subject to the modern shaving regime, along with my pussy, my legs, my underarms, the upper lip, both big toes, and the top of my feet as well. Of course, the upper lip doesn't get shaved, but rather plucked, because we all know you'll develop a mustache if you shave it. As a girl, you don't want that. I used to be happy enough without all the shaving, but then I started with that crap, and now I can't quit. Back to shaving my ass. Like, okay, get a decent insight into her personality, I suppose. I don't really think you get much else, and ASMR, fucking, you don't quit. Behave yourself. Yeah, I kind of agree that the opening is the opening. It probably is the best part, but it's mainly because it's an intriguing opening, and you do get that kind of information about. Okay, we find out. You kind of get an idea that she's not very old, and yet she then has to tell you. I don't really know why. I almost feel like the author's playing a little bit of a trick in some ways, because we're all told, you know, show don't tell and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, if you're in the head of a teenager they might feel that obligation to be like, you know, reiterative. You know, they will reiterate and repeat themselves and whatnot as a personality kind of thing. But is it just a bit of a trick, you know? For some reason I was reminded when I was younger, probably around the age of the protagonist in this, I used to go to this bar with my dad, and there were these typical kind of, what do you call them, working class kind of types. Like, just despite my accent and things like that, I'm very working class, if not actually just piss poor at this point. But yeah, I'm not as middle class as I might sound. Anyway, yeah, so we used to frequent this bar, and of course when you do that you get to know a few people and whatnot. And I remember this guy, I'll call him Fred. He was probably a few years older than me at the time. I was only like 17, I think, when I was going there, and he was friends with someone who really liked my dad, and there was a kind of weird bond between them because his actual dad was misdiagnosed with cancer and all this kind of stuff. But this friend of his was like a proper This Is England type, almost. Like, he was a little like stocky, spoke like, almost had a perpetually kind of clenched face, even if he wasn't frowning. It's just like, looked mean, looked something like, almost like a caricature of some sort of Dickensian villain, you know. Stocky, scary looking, you know, you wouldn't fuck with him. Big kind of nose, everything's got kind of like, he's just odd, you know, kind of thing. But kind of in that young way where he just kind of comes across a bit unhinged as well. And he was playing this fruit machine, and he wasn't doing particularly well. He was putting money in it, and there was this other gentleman in there. He reminded me a bit of like Boise from Only Fools. Like, he had this laugh where he would just like do this weird thing where he'd keep like doing that. He was a bit of a fruit machine fanatic, let's say. So if anyone was ever playing one, he would clock it, because he's thinking, oh, if that fruit machine gets fed well and doesn't pay out, it's going to be due to pay out. Like, this is the kind of mentality of people who go to pubs, you know, or play fruit machines or gamble in general. So he's watching Fred, and Fred's losing. He's feeding this thing, and even he knows that he's being watched as he plays it, because as soon as he gives up, someone's going to jump on it, and it's going to be, let's call him Colm. Colm's going to jump on it, our fucking Irish Boise, and even in preparation, because they're so used to doing this, that Colm went off to the toilet, and Fred's clocked it and kind of just looked over, seen him go past, and he's put his last quid in and lost everything. And so then he kind of stands up. He puts his finger, like, gets his finger like that, and I was just thinking, why is he putting his middle finger up? Like, is he going to start something here? Goes like this, sticks it inside his trousers. He's wearing joggers, so it's easy to do. Puts his middle finger up his own arse, swirls it around, brings it out, and he rubs it over the the button of the fruit machine, the main button to get it to spin. He kind of smears it in there and everything, and then he stands up all proud of himself kind of thing. And then Colm comes back, and obviously he gets his wallet out, starts putting it in the fucking fruit machine. But before he came back, Fred goes, yeah, he might get my money, but later on when he goes to scratch his nose, he'll smell my shit. Fuck that cunt. And everyone starts laughing and all this kind of stuff. But it's just like, that is what this novel is. It's sticking its own finger up its arse and then making you sniff it as you read. That's kind of what it does. That's, yeah, to me that was like, but it does it under the guise of feminism, ironically. But yeah, funny story. But then whenever I look back at that incident, I just kind of like, the mentality of it is so bizarre. Like, it's just like, it's actually similar to the protagonist of Wetlands, because it's just like this odd fascination with your own bodily fluids and fecal matter, and using it as a kind of, even in the novel it mentions when she goes to see prostitutes how some guys would, when she talks to the prostitutes, so she said one of them says that a few guys will go there and with a deliberately unwashed cock because they like the power or whatever it is of making the prostitute blow them regardless of like them being dirty and all that kind of thing. And maybe it's a similar thing to that, but yeah, just remember thinking that it's just a weird, almost oddly intimate in a sense. Like you can kind of see like they almost bonded in their fruit machine addiction to the point he still wants to be a part of his experience. So he will literally wipe his ass pussy fucking excrement on there to just kind of share it in a really weird way. Like it would have, I don't even know what to make of all of that, but okay, now it's taken me like an hour to smoke that cigarette. Right, yeah, I think the review's done. Maybe I'll have a bit more to add about it, but overall I thought it was good. I probably sounded like I didn't really enjoy it that much, but it is kind of fun to read. It does get too grating. Like toward the middle part I was just kind of like starting to think, where is this going? Like there was a big dip. There usually is a dip in a novel, unfortunately. But I felt it was a shame with this one, because if it was a novella, it would have been a lot stronger. It probably, I think, what it should have realised is that it repeated the plot line to its own detriment. And if it actually acknowledged that and tried to make it more impactful instead, because Helen makes out this kind of self-awareness, and maybe she realised that it was likely she actually injured herself on purpose because possibly she felt guilt for the sterilisation that she had, and that was a weird way of kind of acknowledging it because she was back at the hospital where she had this operation. Whatever. Maybe she should have been a little bit cleverer about the way she wanted to get her parents there. I don't know. But at the same time, I do feel somewhat bad for shitting on it, mainly because I don't know, there was something about it that worked. It felt like it could have just been a bit more, you know. I don't think it deserves the hate it gets, but I also don't think the praise is actually too truthful either, in a way, mainly because it feels like, and this isn't just to do with Wetlands, but more also other novels I've read, where just because it's a fucking female author, you'll get all of this shtick about, it's this feminist literature, you know, and it's just, I'm just so tired of like seeing this stuff. It's like, it's so boring at this point, where it's just like, what, just because it's a woman writing about being a woman, that makes it immediately feminist? It's like, why? Like, I don't understand how that logic works. It just feels like a bullshit moniker to give it, just to make it seem deep or make it seem important. It's just a marketing trick, you know. A novel about Fred. He was a fucking lunatic, that guy. Like, not in a terrible way, but I used to play football with him a little bit, and only a couple of times, like a five-a-side thing, and you would count your blessings that you were on his team, because once things would go wrong, or if he was in a particular mood or whatever, he'd just start trying to break people's legs. Like it like almost like there's no football. Like, he's literally like having a kind of 50-50 with someone, and then something would just snap, and he'd literally be trying to stamp on their knees and stuff like that. Like, you'd just be like, fucking hell, like, he is an absolute animal. Like, in so many ways. And it was just like, who knows why he was like that. But yeah. Anyway, if some of you haven't voted for the next book, the vote is there, which I'll be declaring soon. I mean, I've noticed a pattern when whenever I mention what book I'm intrigued by on my newsletter, it comes dead last. Twice now this has happened. It's like I'm getting fucking paranoid. So what's that all about? But yeah, whatever. Make a choice now, and once I've announced it, that'll be it. And I'm not sure how long I'll leave it. I mean, I don't really know how many of you struggle to read 200 pages in a week. Honestly, like, you pull your fucking finger out, as Fred would say, because it's ridiculous. Like, you can't fit that in. That's like a 200-page novel. It's like less than 20 pages. I don't know, slightly more than 20 pages. About 23, 24 pages a day to get through with it in a week. That's nothing. Oh, it's easy for you to say. And no, it's not. It's reading. It's because you're so addicted to screens that the thought of looking at text for an hour and actually concentrating on something actually makes you shit your pants these days. So this is the level we're at. Sad reality. But yeah, it's certainly addressable, and the only way that you can really do it is to, you got to jump into it. You got to force yourself. Got to have a bit of courage. Fucking just read. Jesus, it's not hard. And in all honesty, I think if I do start giving you 2-3 weeks to read something, you still won't read it anyway. So what do I care? I might as well just go along with it and carry on at my own pace, you know. Set the example, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if any of you do want a review, because I'll be back reviewing books in the old way. I think sometimes I'll do them for the ones that have already been on the book club, but I'll also be doing them for ones that I'm reading outside of, the book club pieces. So if you do want a particular book to be reviewed, a small donation will make that happen. And I don't mean to be fucking constantly trying to flog shit, but I kind of have to. That's just how it is. Like, I can't ignore that. Like, I got booted off Patreon, so I can't offer that anymore. You can become members of my main channel. That would help. I know you're probably reluctant to do that because, it's fucking YouTube, but or you could just sign up to the PayPal and make it a monthly thing. That essentially that serves as the same thing as a subscription or membership as a patron or whatever. But yeah, there's options basically, because I'd like to keep this going and really give it something. I've just got to try and justify the effort involved. But yeah, I'm aware that it's early days, so you need to see the reviews actually come out and all of that kind of stuff, but they're coming. And yeah, I don't know. I suppose overall, the 3 stars for Wetlands I think is fine. I think if I was to be extra generous, I might say 3.5. Like, it's enjoyable. The transgressive elements are fine for me, like, but in a lot of ways they don't really. I kind of just don't even bat an eye at that kind of stuff. It's like, to me, it's like, of course it's going to have transgressive elements. But if it's going to be in any way real, people, I just like that. Doesn't, say if it's trying to shock me, it's going to have to do more than talk about period blood or fecal matter and stuff like that. It's like, yeah. But I suppose I feel like from this stream I've almost made out as if I'd disliked it more than I liked it, whereas really I think I'm actually between both. I'm kind of, at the centre of the seesaw. There was parts I liked and there was parts I didn't like so much. I still thought the ending finished it off pretty nicely, and it was poignant overall, which is a surprising success of the novel, given that it did get a bit repetitive, but I thought it sewed it up pretty well, and it also indicated just how fucking easy it is for a young woman to get sex regardless of her condition, which unfortunately is true. But yeah, the novel was oddly prophetic in that regard, considering the year it came out. But do you ever get that, like, I don't know, when you look at everything that's kind of occurred in the last 5 to 10 years and you consider what's going on right now, especially with this AI stuff and all of that, but it's just absurd, like, trying to think of, is the world ever going to be something that feels stable anymore? Because a lot of the time in human history, things took a long time to change, whereas nowadays, at least online, or maybe exclusively online, everything feels like it moves just way too fucking fast to ever hope to keep up with. And you just kind of wonder, like, where are we headed? Because I read something about, apparently since ChatGPT and all of this kind of stuff, there's been a massive drop off of people visiting other media outlets, whether it's newspapers or news stories online, just articles in general. Been a big drop off all over because people are just going straight to chat and just fucking prompting, asking different shit. And obviously the ironic thing is, like, chat will probably source from those very articles that are not getting read to give an opinion, so it's just regurgitating what you could have found written by an actual journalist. But then at some point, obviously, if there's this massive fall, then there'll be no work for these people. So then at what point will then ChatGPT actually have to be the thing that creates the article that it will then source from? And it's all getting pretty wild. And that's not even talking about, like, the video creation that's starting to come into play and all this kind of type of stuff. Like, I kind of wonder, at some point, writing a book or whatever will become purely recreational. Like, it won't be to do with getting published or possibly getting your book in a bookstore and whatnot, because essentially everyone will have their own bookstore on their computer or phone, and they'll be able to write books of their own desires and whatnot. They're just, admittedly, these books will likely still suck, and it doesn't really encapsulate what I think writing and the craftsmanship of it is all about. But I don't think that matters to most people. That's the problem. And I think if someone could actually ask it to say, oh, I want to read a new Hunger Games, but I want it set in Detroit, and I want the main protagonist to have my name, and I want them to be sought after, like they're in a love triangle, a harem, a reverse harem. and then I mean, and there's already so many stories out there like this, and I've also heard that ChatGPT has this certain style that it has, because a lot of the literature that it derives from is all fan fiction, and there's a kind of a certain trait to fan fiction that is inherent in ChatGPT in terms of how it tries to fictionalize pieces that it's prompted to do. And yeah, I don't know. I think the problem when you give dum-dums the chance to do things and feel like they're part of the creation and whatnot, that will become way more important to them than actually trying to read a book and understand it. It's far more preferable to feel like you were partly the creator, right? So and there'll be even less respect for the craft in general, like of what it takes to actually put a novel together, because everyone will be like, well, I can do that, I know how to do it, I can just ask I can come up with the idea and just ask ChatGPT to do it. It means basically the same thing, right? So to me, it won't become about seeking great literature or whatever. It will become far more about people seeing artworks of the past as something that they can create, because their imagination can prompt a computer to basically do something unique, because they can basically tell it everything they want it to do. And it's like, that isn't entertainment as we know it. That's the problem. It all becomes even more individualistic, essentially. Like that's all it will ever be. So what does that do to the meaning of something like a novel or a short story or a film, when you could just say, oh, I want to watch Titanic, but I don't like how long it is, so make sure it's an hour shorter. I'd rather I don't know, fucking whatever actress was in ahead of Kate Winslet, and instead of that dude, make him look like me, and then they can live out their literal fantasy, probably in a virtual VR kit, so they're actually living the story of fucking Titanic, skipping forward to the titty part, and then that's it. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like, what the fuck does writing, what's that going to mean to anyone, or reading something going to mean, when you've got systems and computer programs and whatnot that can literally stimulate every part of the brain, and seemingly to your own desires and wishes. It's like wish fulfillment to the very degree, I am trying to have a conversation with you, like, I mean, you're very quiet tonight, so fine, it's all right. That's your prerogative. But yeah, admittedly, I'm probably doing what I accused the novel of earlier and just repeating myself. I'm sure I've waffled on about this bullshit before, but yeah, get your votes in, because I'm going to probably close this stream. So let me the fuck is that still going? Right, yeah, I'm announcing the next book. Hopefully some of you will read it at some point. It seems I can't again because it is tie breaks between Boy Parts and Eliza by Eliza Clark and The Old Man and the Sea. What do you reckon in the chat? What would you prefer? Hemingway or... I mean, to be honest, I'm intrigued by Boy Parts. It has been compared to American Psycho. It might be getting a little bit heavy on the... female author front, but I'm fine with that. I mean, to be honest, I don't give a shit what the gender of the person is. I mean, it's only the time that we're in that fucking seems to make that the, you know, all important factor of everything. Refresh. Oh, Patrick chimes in right at the end. I'm here. I haven't read any of the books like ever, but I'm here to tell you what to read next. You're going to vote Hemingway. I already know the answer to this. Oh no. Okay, I'm wrong. Apologies. Alright, Boy Parts by Eliza Clark is the next book. That's decision made. I wish I could, like, I don't know why YouTube doesn't let me just fucking close this or to, you know, end the fucking thing, but whatever. So yeah, you should see it. There we go. That's, I mean, look at my vote, my poor little vote. If you're on the newsletter, you would have like actually seen a little bit of a synopsis for the books. This is like about a dude who's just left juvie, who has a proclivity for killing young women. I thought you lot would be all over this. Like, he's literally like, it's like Elliot Rodger in book form, but hopefully with a well-written piece, you know. And you all snub it because it's, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Boy Parts it is. Let me see how long this book is. So boring without football, right? I swear. Fucking, I still watch football related content, and I'm just like, it's not even the end of June. I'm so bored with all of this shtick about transfer rumours and all. It's so dull. It's just like, come on. Alright, I'm just trying to find out the length. I'm kind of ignoring synopsis. 300 pages. Okay. I'd say that's another week. Like, I don't really see why we should wait much longer, to be honest. It was published 5 years ago nearly, or pretty much, 2020 in July. There's a kind of readers also enjoyed. I'll show this because why not? I Who Have Never Known Men, which has also been on the show. Great fucking book that is. A Certain Hunger I've heard of before. Eileen. Oh, that's a red flag because that's a load of shit. I didn't mind my year of rest and relaxation. No, it was fine. I talk about, you know, women dominating fucking literature nowadays. Look at like literally every novel here is a female author. Every single one. Which is fine, but it's a bit like, okay, we kind of have an inkling as to what the target audience is for this particular book. But it's a good point. Painbow does raise a good point. Where are they? Because there's like 8 in here. Alright, well, we'll complete the trifecta. I don't know, I actually have a good feeling about Boy Parts. I think it might be quite good. I enjoyed Play It As It Lays, I thought it was fucking great. And this one wasn't bad. So, it's not been a bad run. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think any of us really care if it was written by a man or a woman. It's just the way the publishing industry is these days. Not to mention the kind of society we're in. As I said before, it just gets tiring. Why is every book it's feminist, groundbreaking piece? It's almost like they ignore the fact that a lot of their books kind of suck. And they're nowhere near. I mean, it's similar to with Wetlands. It's like this book's nowhere near as. I mean, admittedly, it's not propped up to be this masterpiece anyway, but it's more the kind of taglines it gets, I suppose. I think that's what kind of bothers me, where it's just like, oh yeah, because it was written by a woman, it must be feminist. And therefore, anything. It's like even when I did that existential thing, like it was like with I Who Have Never Known Men, gets feminist masterpiece. It's like, is it? What the fuck does gender have to do with it in there? It's very little in terms of the actual context of the piece and what it's trying to say. It's like, come on. That was the whole reason I had it in there, because it's refreshingly not of that kind of like panda bullshit element. But then again, I think the only reason it got popular was because it slapped a new title on it and appealed to these girls who will jump on anything that has this kind of label, because they've probably because they feel as if they're part of a communal experience, and that's so hard to find nowadays. So I get it in that regard. This lighting is not very friendly. Give me a sec. That's fucking worse, but I'm getting old. That's the problem. That is a problem. Can I send you a copy? Yeah, sure. I'll do it in the morning. I stopped watching after 10 minutes. Fair enough. 10 minutes. Well, Painbow, you're going to read it anyway, so I don't have to worry about you. It's more, well, everyone else. But yeah, whatever. I think I'll leave it there. Like, it's quiet. You know, I'm happy to close these streams earlier, because if I carry on when I have fuck all of an audience, I get depressed. So it's a good time to call it quits. We know what the next book is. I hope more people get involved. Maybe they will if after next week. I don't know. I'll pick some. I'll pick some good ones for the next vote. So jump on the mailing list if you want to know what that is. No, the poll ended when I said it fucking ended. It's done. If it's for next week, oh, you're out. Going on holiday for the first time in 6 years. Fucking hell. Where are you going? Good for you, by the way. Well, the poll hasn't changed. Boy parts are still there. It's number one. Patrick, you are a bit special at times. I mean, why are you telling me to... You didn't tell me to check it, but... What about if I give you 2 weeks? You game? As a kind of a nod to you for sticking around and actually being a participant of this, I'm fine with giving you the time. In fact, I call it now. I mean, it's up to you. You want to read it, or if you don't want to read it, fine by me. 2 weeks. So it'll be 2 weeks tonight, basically. Well, to be honest, it also gives me time to do other shit, so that's you know, I'm judging it basically. If people don't want to watch this, then I'll just keep them short and sweet and basically treat it like a book review. You know, it's little reason for me to overthink it, to be honest, because yeah, well, let's call it a night. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Enjoy your holiday. I mean, if you're back for it, I don't even know if you are, but I might end up making it like a midweek thing at some point. So just, yeah. I might do. I mean, to be honest, I don't think the quality of them's good enough to just throw into a review, but I guess I could. That's true. I could if I looked over it. But with this one, I'm kind of going off the cuff. Like, I'm not. Yeah. It's hard to know when I would call it. Like, okay, that's enough talking about that bit. It's a slightly different process, but yeah, I might at some point just you know, might as well regurgitate it a little bit, but I feel like with the books I'm actually going to review, I suppose, I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit more generous in what type of things I'm fine with reading, whereas like if I start reviewing books again, I do think I'll actually pick ones that have a bit more canonical weight to them, I suppose, or whatever. But we'll see. I mean, I was going to do the incest diary because I have thoughts on it. I mean, I don't think it's a particular, it's not groundbreaking in any way, shape or form, but at the same time I could talk about it for 10 minutes and just throw out a review. That's not a problem. Do a live book review stream, then do a polished video. Well, yeah, but then that's not me. Polishing this shit is just not worth it. I might as well just record it again, as a 10-minute, 15-minute vid. Will I do it for Wetlands? Nah. What's the point? But if it's something that I really love, or something that I think is worthwhile, or something that I want to rant about, then I'll do it. The literary renaissance is happening. Yeah, it is. It is, kind of. I mean, the only kind of hope I have a little bit at the moment, I suppose, is that it feels right to go back to book reviews, mainly because I just see so much fucking slop out there. So it's kind of finally gone full circle for me, where I'm just like, I just want to talk about fucking books again. Like, I don't want to not think. That's the problem. And it's like all ChatGPT and Claude and all this kind of stuff. The usage of these things has its benefits. I'm not shitting all over it and dismissing it completely, but in a way all it's doing is it's just thinking for you, and it's a bit like, then what's the point in being or having imagination or like your own way of thinking? It's fucking dumb. Like, it's just a bit like, we might as well use the internet in this small kind of corner for our own pastime or whatever. I mean, we're fucked. I mean, we're completely cooked. I think we know this, but we might as well talk about some good books or whatever. Or even shitty books. Like, at least shitty books that we know were actually written by people. That's nice. Anyway, cheers for tuning in. Yeah, I'll see you soon. I could add on sell here, but it just feels a bit pointless when there's 7 people watching. So I'll see you soon. Take care. Enjoy your holiday, Painbow, wherever you're fucking going. You probably don't deserve a holiday, but it's good to get away, refresh the brain and all of that. Good luck to you, Patrick, with all this work that you have to do. And yeah, I'll see you soon.